You're now rocking with the best.
Welcome.
Please welcome all of you
to Startcast.
So, hallo meine Damen und Herren. Yeah? Just kidding, this isn't going to be in German, this is going to be in English. I thought I'd wake you all up with that. My name's Joel, I'm from Cropster. Originally from the UK, I've been in Berlin now about 10 years. I do speak German well enough, but not for this particular topic. But definitely over food, beer, all the kind of stuff that you guys like. So the title was a bit about quality control and inventory management. I thought I would focus a bit more on inventory management today, and in particular, a use case with Cropster that I think a lot of people aren't using so well. And from some of our internal discussions, we noticed that a lot of people, if you're not familiar with this, it's for roasting software for roasteries to, we don't necessarily help you improve the quality, but let you assess the quality of your roasting, but there's a lot of features within Cropster that are underutilized. So one of the things is inventory management is a massive leverage on our product, and something that I've learned in my latter years working in roasteries that you could do this, and I decided to talk about using Cropster to assist with managing your BIO coffee, the inventory. Does anyone here buy BIO coffee at their roastery? Yep. Anything you want to say about that? Or? It's the first use, so. Okay, so good. Perfect timing. We'll go to the first slide. Yara, that's great, thank you. So that's the sentence I just said, and then we're going to go into here. So it's a little bit of a summary. We saw a little bit of a box earlier from our friend showing us about what it takes to have certain standards defined as by EU regulations. Different countries have different regulations around their BIO-certified coffee. Other countries call it organic. That's about the difference. So a few things there. Prohibited use of GMOs, so genetically modified organisms. I'm sure we're familiar with this. I need to see that word there. The forbidden use of ionizing radiation. So, you know, using things to kill pests and using radiation. We're all afraid of that word. Limited use of artificial fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, prohibited use of hormones, restricting the use of antibiotics. So these are things that, you know, are protecting the environment and protecting the crop and the soil. This is a big thing. I think if you've been to coffee farms, you'll notice that quite a lot of producers are aiming to do this anyway, right? Because it's sustainable for the land. They're the ones that are the front-facing with the land and can educate us always when we go. And then there's a few points here on what it takes to produce BIO-certified coffee. One thing is soil must comply with an audit to certify it as organic soil. So this can take up to, you know, this is where you have to remove the crop you're growing, regenerate the soil. This can take up to 4 to 5 years. Then you got to plant the coffee, and if it's not a geisha, it's going to take 4 to 5 years to mature, some a couple of years. So it's a big investment for a producer to go into down this route. Regular crop rotation, so not exhausting the land, like pulling the crops out at a certain time. This could affect the deforestation. There's another certification for that, I guess. Then cultivating nitrogen-rich plants. So nitrogen helps the soil generate sort of the plant as well. It's a really important factor within the soil composition. So a natural way a lot of producers will help it reintroduce nitrogen to the soil is, for example, legumes, so beans, Bohnen for the Germans. But, you know, they fall or they might fall into the ground, and it helps the plant and the land last a bit longer. Prohibited use of non-natural nitrogen fertilizers and reducing the impact of weed and pests through natural pest control. So this is kind of giving a bit of the context here. This day and age, you know, there's another certification coming out every other week, and we all try, and our consumers are becoming more and more aware, and they want to look for that on the bag, and sustainability is key, and I think this is the one that a lot of people know about. So there's a bit of the outline. And what does this mean for, that's the amount of work that goes in at farm level, right? And then it comes to the roasters, we buy it, we choose it. I'm no longer a roaster, but I have been. You choose it, and then what happens is they've met some standards at that level, and then it gets shipped to Europe, and we need to fulfill those standards. So yeah, we'll call it farm to cup. So you can go to the next page. Thank you. There's a BIO Cafe auditor. That's how they do it. They take a handful and they look at it, and if anyone's been familiar with this, has anyone been audited by someone at this? Do you want to just elaborate and quickly, as loud as you can, what it was like?
The first time time was heavy.
Yeah.
The second time was better.
Okay.
So it's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of paperwork, but in the end they're here just to help you.
Yep.
So no worries there. So
It is scary, yeah. You're worrying, okay, what do they want from me? And a lot of the time it's lots of paperwork. And you need to be on top of that paperwork, and that's a big thing. You need to keep it in some way in a folder, in your roastery, somewhere logged on a shelf, operating in roasteries at time, like, you know, even if you're claiming a tax back on coffee that you sent outside of Germany, it's the same thing. You keep the Lieferscheins, the note of delivery, the shipping label so you can track where it went. So this whole process, once the coffee reaches you, there's a few standards that you need to fulfill to have organic coffee in your roastery. So I'll go into a few points here. You can keep on the slide, thanks. What's really important is the separation of organic products from non-organic products is a requirement. So when your organic coffee arrives in your roastery, ideally you have a separate area where it's kept. It cannot be kept on the same pallet as non-organic coffee. There cannot be any cross-contamination. So if you want, you can draw a square on the floor that says organic, and when they come and assess that, that's actually like a thumbs up, right? So if there's a clear definition of where it is, right? Yeah, they're like, great, you could put anything there. They will check the bags as well, but once they've noticed you have organic coffee, they will ask you, okay, where's the paperwork for that? And you have to submit that. And there's, on this paperwork, generally, there's like a purchase order number, there's the warehouse, say, it doesn't become apparent to you until it arrives at the roastery. So say if it's stored in Hamburg, at whatever warehouse, they will have their certification. And when they send it to you, they will have to send you a piece of paper which then explains their certification, and then it goes into the database. A few of the things that you need to keep separate is when you've roasted the organic coffee, the bio coffee, you have to store it in a different container, and you have to prove that you have a different container, right? So again, just as simple as having a container that you label as organic is a thumbs up from the auditor. It seems, you know, but it works. This is what they want. Another thing is roasting a separate coffee, your bio coffee separate to non-bio. And you can sort of, all of this stuff you can actually kind of justify in Cropster. Not that they recognize Cropster as a beneficiary of them. I'm not in no way affiliated with that man. And I don't know if that's what he actually does. But just to, like, a lot of this stuff can be helped within Cropster to track that for you, right? So I'll go into a bit of detail about roasting your coffee separate. Clear definition on, we're still on the slide, sorry. If we go back, I'll speed it up if you need. Actually, I've got my back to you, so you can't tell me. So clear rules and labeling. Again, I've just mentioned this, of being super clear that everything is labeled correctly as bio, even on the bag and the end product, right? So, for example, when you ship the coffee out, having the roast date's important, because at some point with your organic coffee, someone might just submit this coffee to the auditor or some EU regulation company, and then they're going to contact you and say, can you prove this coffee is organic? So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to search for when that coffee was roasted, pull a sample from that, and they're going to assess that, right? So again, labeling is really important for you and for them. And then the last stage is proof of traceability of organic coffees by showing a mass balance. Are you familiar with a mass balance? Which is, yeah, so it's like, to summarize it very quickly, a mass balance is like, okay, you need to prove this coffee came in, you need to prove you roasted it, and you need to prove it went out, and then where that is. And this needs to eventually equate to 0, right? Which, first things first, the problem there is, say 100 kilo comes in, you roast it, and you have a moisture and density loss of X%. They're going to be like, where did that go? And you can't just say it evaporated, because then you're going to lose your certification, right? So let's go over to the next slide. Thank you, Yara. So first thing, utilizing Cropster's features for compliance with the bio-certified inventory and production. I tried to make it longer, but they don't come wider. So first things first is just really, it's Cropster, right? If anyone's used Cropster, like with the lexicon, I wanted to mention this, is when you said you could bring up, the user could bring up their flavor notes, you're then working with user entry data, which can be very complex. It can be, you know, bio here, organic in the UK, another word somewhere else. So having the data entry is really important, and you can use Cropster to do this very well, and there's a lot of fields you can add into your inventory a lot. So what I've seen sometimes is people will buy coffee, and they'll just put like Brazil, Santos, cool, this many kilos comes, cool, and then they'll put a profile to it, and then when you roast, that stock will be reduced every time you roast, and then it tells you when you have less. What you can actually do is be quite critical and detailed in the data that you're entering. So if you, for example, when you want to enter any BIO coffee that you have, if you label it all with a consistent word, so BIO in the case here, right? So whenever you want to look back at what your stock levels are or where this coffee's at, you just enter that word, right? You can enter the correct date of registration. So this is important because registration is when you register it into Cropster, but you can also use this as when you purchased it or when you expect for it to arrive at the roastery. And this is important because when you get assessed for your BIO coffee current situation, right, they're not going to come in and say, show me the whole year. Sometimes they come in and they might say, show me a month from this specific year. This happened to you or this happened?
We had to show the whole year, but...
Damn. Damn. I've been lucky and had 1 month, and I was like, sweet. No problem. But the problem is it was a few years ago before I worked there. Again, that paperwork is somewhere underground in a vault in Norway. So entering that date of registration, but then within Cropster, because what it does is it adds in, okay, this is when it arrives, and then you know, you can get a snapshot view and you can sort of track, okay, how much that was at this time, and you can see in that month period. And then if you enter the next steps of your data correctly, so the ICO numbers, any PO numbers, tracking numbers, you can put the container in there as well. You can then reference this along the whole system, right? And then this just allows you to track back all the way back because, you know, it can give you what you should expect to have used in that time if you use it correctly. So say they go, well, what happened in this month? And you're like, okay, I'm going to start with this and say, okay, this much coffee arrived. This is how much was used at the end of that month. I'm going to look at this. And then you're going to pull up your ICO numbers, the invoices that you got and the certifications you got from the warehouse. And then you're going to have yours, and you're going to pull up your bags, and you're going to know how many bags you roasted in that time and how much of that inventory you should be looking for has disappeared for when you have to justify the mass balance. So what the result is at the end to get to zero. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. Any questions at this point on this? Because it's pretty heavy, this one too. And please, if you have a question, it won't interrupt my flow. So now is talking about how you can use Cropster to actually manage this separation of your storage and production. Keeping your inventory logged within Cropster for automated inventory management through a connected roast machine. And then using Cropster's location tracking for easy management, track shipments of coffee from origin to warehouse to roastery, include any detailed numerical, as I just explained. So not such high HD, it's okay. But you can label it and you can sort of, okay, you can type in here your certifications, whatever other certifications there are, if I can reach. And it will bring up all those coffees if you put those certifications in correctly. So anytime you can really just pull that up and gather that. You don't have to go back to your folder and get all the paperwork and be like, all right, where was that? Where was this? It's all going to come up there for you. You can show us when you want to know how much has come in, right? So say you've purchased 100 kilos of coffee, but you don't store 100 kilos of coffee at a roastery. You store part of it in Hamburg, for example. You're going to be able to log in and check what your current inventory should be so that when you get audited, you're like, okay, this is what I should have. And then you also can start investigating, what's the problem here? Where's it gone? Why has it disappeared? Have I sold it? And it's just like all of these layers of data help you just be a bit more aware of what's actually going, because it's a lot of work to maintain this certification as a roastery. They require a lot from you. It's fun at some point, but yeah. So then we're going to go into a little bit about the clear labeling. So clearly labeling storage of roasted batches to avoid mistakes. Roast Intelligence, RI, internally, it's a software company, so everything's an abbreviation. We call it RI. This is the profiler that you use separate to Cropster. This has the option to print labels while you're roasting. Now, this is really useful because when you're roasting, what's important is actually, I actually argue that it's way better to have the batch number on your bagged coffee than it would be the date, just so that when you want to track that back. So when you're printing your coffee, maybe they audit you while you're actually producing, right? And if you have every bucket, again, just labeled with organic on it, you can print that directly from Cropster and it will have all of this information on you, so it's another automated feature. As I said there, adding roast batch numbers or roast dates to your bagged roasted coffee bags. This will allow easy navigation if a future audit is requested. Do you do that? Do you put the PR number on there? Yeah, cool. as I said, like if someone comes up and then they contact you and say, this coffee is being checked if it's organic, and you're like, whoa, it was one of 600 on that day, which batch was it? You actually have to withdraw a sample from every coffee, right? Somehow, which I don't know how you would do that because, you know, it was 6 months ago. Where is that? Maybe you have some of the green if you're lucky. I don't know if there is a limit on how far they can go back into the past, but it would be good to know. Maybe I can find someone. So yeah, clear labeling. Separate roasting times. This is really interesting. That is actually very helpful. So you think to yourself, okay, how am I going to prevent cross-contamination with my roasting? Because you have to be clear that you're not roasting in the same machine organic coffee as non-organic coffee, right? So what you can do is you can just roast the organic coffee on a whole separate day, but you have to have cleaned it within the time that you've roasted the non-organic coffee, the conventional coffee. So you can basically use Cropster to log your first roasts in the morning, and then those roasts were all organic, and then start roasting conventional. And then at the end of that day, you can use our task management feature to make sure that whoever's in the roastery team is going to clean that and log that off. So at least you can show that, again, it seems remedial and not relevant, but the auditor is going to look at that and go, oh, cool, you've just got some record. It's like, for example, if you have to clean the toilets and the Gesundheitsamt comes to the cafe, and you know what you do. You just write a million times like this person did it, or the temperatures of the fridges. Everyone's just like put it wherever it was, but change 1 decimal point. We're all doing it, so just to get it. Yeah, that's a guilty crowd of laughing. So you can use this, right? And this is then you can get reports on this and show this to them and say, hey, these are the methods that we're using. Scale this up to, say you are a roastery with 3 to 4 machines. Our friends at Camilo over there, you have a bunch of machines there. If you have done that, we can talk about this if you need to go through this process at some point. But you might have different technicians or different people cleaning machines. There's a format there, right? And if they say, okay, you've got 3 machines, which ones are being used for organic? And you're like, this one is, and this one is, and it's cleaned at this time. So that's a way you can use Cropster to like sort of show this to someone and keep on top of that if you ever get audited. Next slide, please. Oh, no, one more back. Way too fast. There we go. Yeah, there's a roaster. Some pretty dark beans came out of there, but it's just, we'll put that down to the lighting. And there's a roaster picking out all the Quakers and the greens that he just accidentally dropped in. So this is a little bit of a summary of a mass balance. So this is where you have to ensure accurate tracking of organic coffee throughout the production process. You need to verify all purchased green coffee by storing paperwork, such as bill of lading. It's not bill of landing, I thought it was a spelling mistake, but it's actually bill of lading. And invoices referring organic certification, receivable notes at the roastery matching reference numbers. So you can add all of this information to your lots within Cropster. So at any point you need to pull that out and need to search that. If you enter it correctly and you maintain that, and then it's roasted and it's all attached, you can just really get a quick snapshot view of what you need to know if you ever get audited, or if you just need to know what it is. You can register green coffee in the ERP, just another abbreviation, basically just Cropster, as organic with certification and reference numbers from the bill of. So again, just all of these levels of numbers are really important to enter, and you can use Cropster to do this by adding this by fields. There's certain fields you can do. You can also basically, with that, if you enter that and you have some coffee in different locations, you can also put it like on the ocean. So you could say one location is in shipment, and then once it moves from shipment to your warehouse, you move it along. And all of these steps, and you can have that same number. So you can basically justify where everything is and show where everything is at any given moment. Monitor your roasted coffee inventory and usage. I just touched on that. So track the amount that you have and what's remaining. Use profiles attached to green lots, and use production reports to ensure correct weight loss logging. So I mentioned this when you're being audited, and then this whatever percent that you've lost from moisture and density loss from roasting has disappeared. They're going to say what happened, right? And they're going to say, where did that go? You're not going to say it evaporated. You're going to go, well, this is how much I weighed on the way in, and this is how much I weighed on the way out. And it's important that you do that and log that manually before and after, and then they're going to check your Vaga, and they're going to go, how often do you calibrate this? Again, you can match that you've calibrated this in Cropster X amount of times over this time period, and then they're going to be like, thumbs up, we see you're doing something. Thanks for that. It sounds like it's really easy, but it's not. Is that 5 minutes, or is that a door? So yeah, it's all of this stuff is things that are underutilized and things that people don't know about, and there's a lot of stuff that most people use it as a profiler or just inventory management. Okay, I put this number in and it starts disappearing, but there's a lot of stuff you can do to just kind of make everything, all the information internally kept in Cropster and all of this just a lot more efficient for you to be able to track what's going on. The next stage in this mass balance, I thought I'd touch on this as well, is you need to, so they've come and audited you and they've checked, okay, you've done your mass balance, you said this much came in, this much was roasted, this much was lost due to moisture and density loss, and then they're going to go, where did it go? And you have to prove where did the coffee go, right? So this is going to be, probably at Cafe Imports, it's a bit easier because you're not doing small, like 700,000 retail bags a year, I don't know. That's the biggest roastery ever. But you have to then show where all of those bags went, right? And that's, even if it's an organic bag, that's all your retail bags from your web shop. It's not just wholesale customers, right? So you have to prove what that looked like. Where did it go? How much and say you can prove that all of that went out, right? So all of your coffee went out and you get all the invoices from Shopify, you get all the delivery notes from DHL, FedEx, whoever you use. You also have to have the confirmed receipt by customers. It's a lot of layers of communication here, right? Then on top of that, say if anyone here is a roaster that has an owner that they work for as a roastery, they probably come in and take a couple of bags for themselves, right? And then you have to say, oh, the owner come in. Well, how do you log that? You know, my boss came in and took 10 bags of organic coffee to an organic farm convention, you know, and they're going to go, well, that's not cool. So you have to say, okay, where that went. So you can log all of this, and we are now actually working on it's called Cropster Commerce, where it has an API with Shopify, so you can get this data then too. And it also has rotated inventory as well. So if your boss comes in and takes that off, you got to be like, look, dude, you got to log in to Cropster and then put the minus in yourself because I'm not going to do it for you. But you can have this tracking, so you can also then eventually make this chain a bit clearer in the end. And then the final calculation is this combination of things that I've explained. So I tried to put like a 4-hour topic in, how long was that? 20 minutes, 30 minutes? 35? Okay, good. And there's a lot more to know, and there's a lot of knowledge to have here for people that are managing this. I'm here all day, I guess, so you can get in touch. You can take a picture of that. That's not my personal number, that's my work number. But I'll be here later in network.
Thanks for clarifying.
Thanks. Well, Jake, you're always asking for it. But yeah, I'll be here like later for networking, and if you've got any questions about this, if you've got any questions now off the top of your head, go ahead for it. Go, Tom.
Is there going to be a future function where you can upload leaf shines and attach it to lots that you bring into the roastery? Because then obviously you'd be able to click on a BO lot and all the information would be on the leaf shine.
True. What you can do is, if I believe so, you can add URL links to some of the lots. So you could PDF scan it in, add that URL link. But it's a good question. No answer on that. But you can always call me to know more developments. Any other questions about this topic? Anyone got anything they want to share? Any stories? Does anyone like organic coffee? Is anyone looking to buy organic coffee? Sorry?
No, I just want to encourage people. It's not that difficult.
No, it's not.
Because you have everything digitally, and also you usually get invoices from the shop system. So for me, it was like
exactly.
I was surprised that it was easier than I thought.
You keep your leafy shines for your wholesale customers, right? Like when you send your coffee out, you have a double leafy shine. If you deliver in person, it's the same thing. You just keep a leafy shine, and you just keep that in a folder, and you just...
Not even in a folder, like everything digital is fine also.
I should say digital, yeah.
The actual paper to show them. So.
Yeah. And it's like a lot less complicated than you think. And especially with the talk earlier with these new deforestation laws and a lot of stuff coming in, the consumer's becoming more and more in this direction where they're looking for this stuff, and we know organic is a big thing. But I think a lot of people avoid it because they are worried about the level of work that goes in. But it's just like anything. If you develop a routine for something, much like you have for roasting, you'll be able to just consistently do this too, right? And you're probably tracking your green inventory anyway in some way with the paperwork, with receipts, I guess, unless you're scanning it. Depends on how digitally sound you are. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode of StartCast.